there to talk about how we reignite the American dream and what policies we need to work on to get there. So if you want to come talk to me afterwards, please do. Thanks again for being here and having us. Appreciate it.
Daniel Herrera did help sponsor this. Would Daniel like to come up and talk about his law practice at the end of the room? Just a couple minutes, Daniel. All right.
Thank you, Richard. I appreciate the opportunity to sponsor today. For those who don't know me, my name is Daniel Herrera. I'm an attorney here in Knoxville. Our office is downtown on North Broadway. Started off on a solo practitioner with just me, doing all the work myself. At this point now, we've grown to having 3 total attorneys at our firm with paralegal, and it's blown up. And we're looking at expanding to a Chattanooga office next year as well. So it's been great. Thank you all. I know a lot of you from politics are from Niceley Party Chairman. What a blessing was to serve in that position. And I appreciate you all very much. You guys have helped my practice grow, and because of you, we're able to serve the amazing people of East Tennessee in courts all across East Tennessee, from your general sessions courts to your criminal courts, chancery courts, and court of appeals. So thank you all for everything. I appreciate it. Thank you, Richard.
Now, as you see on the slide there, there's a NTI logo there. Some of you may not know what that is, but it's a networking organization here in the area, and Richard Forrest started it a few years back, and I'm going to go do a couple minutes.
Thank you very much, Richard. Good afternoon, good evening. My name is Richard Forrest, and I did start networking today right here in Knoxville, Tennessee. Pre-COVID, we expanded to 12 states, over 1,000 members. Post-COVID, we're in 2 states with about 350 members. The politics that interrupted our business in other states was not what we experienced here in Tennessee. We kept alive in Tennessee. But in other states where they shut down, it was really dramatic. Well, since we run a networking company, we've done well here in Knoxville, we've done well in Nashville, we've done well in other parts of Tennessee. We're seeing an amazing influx of people in our membership coming from everywhere but Tennessee. They're coming from Michigan, they're coming from Ohio, they're coming from Canada, they're coming from California, they're coming from New York. And what we say to them at Networking Today is all are welcome, of course. Of course you're welcome. What we don't want you to do is we don't want you to come and take their politics. What we say to the people that come into our meetings, that's what we say. We like it here, this is what we like, and that's what we say to people at Networking Today. If you don't like that, there's other networking groups you can join, and that's how we feel about it. But it's done well, and many people in this room have been a blessing to Networking Today. And at Networking Today, we want to have what we call connection days, where people of like minds and who like politics or other interests get together and get to meet each other and support each other in an era of community and connection and understanding that we all have beliefs, we all have ideas, and it's okay. We can all get along with our own ideas, and that's one of the things we teach and preach at Networking Today, and we think is something that needs to be preached more often. So that's what we teach at Networking Today. All are welcome, but while you come into our group, there's certain standards, and so that's what Networking Today is all about. It's about communities, about relationships, about what our community is all about, supporting businesses, families, homes, and the economy. And I would be remiss if I didn't say that as an entrepreneur myself, Brooke Rayburn, back in the back of the room, and myself, we launched a brand new mobile app we've been working on for 16 months called Bootlegger Runs. Our mobile app would not be possible, I believe, if we didn't live in the state of Tennessee with our great economic environment, and if we did not have our Networking Today family. So while we are all business-to-business people at Networking Today, if you're in business for yourself or know someone in business, come and check out Networking Today and make sure to download Bootlegger Runs on your App Store or Google Play. You can download it today. It's okay. It's safe. Free, too.
Thanks, Rick. So, the format of this, as you see on your tables, there are no cards. This meeting, the way it works, requires your efforts. So, as we go along, the microphone's going to be turned over to the legislators to talk about a couple of minutes to introduce themselves and talk about the legislation that they're proud of this year. And then during that time, I'm going to come around, pick up the cards, and then our great moderator, Mayor Jacobs will be reading those questions too. So, and then have the ability to interact and whatever. And then, by chance, if there's time left over, we'll have an open mic, I guess. People ask questions at that point. But I wanted to do something, because it hadn't been done here in Knoxville. The last time I did this, I was putting together a radio program with a couple other guys. John Adams was the station manager. He's since passed on. And so his daughter asked me once, why did he decide to move to Knoxville? And it was, he said, he felt like there was going to be a revolution in Knoxville. Now don't get too excited, you January 6th believers. We're not talking about violence. We're just talking about a revolution, maybe of the mind, maybe of seats in office. And that's what came about with our radio show and people connected to that radio show. And there's some people up here that are elected that I'm connected to, that people help get people elected that are on this panel. And anyway, I just thought I'd mention that. Probably didn't do a very good job telling the story, but there was a lot of, there's a few seats in this area that are not occupied by, I guess, chosen. But they weren't the chosen people. But anyway, with that, who wants to go first? Okay, so there's a microphone there, Elaine. As Jason Zachary said earlier, you default to Elaine Davis.
I'll say that because I'm short and
that's
those
fine.
people up there can't see me.
All right.
But my name's Elaine Davis, and as Richard said, I was honored to serve on the radio station for a little bit. I was a fill-in. And so there's quite a few people in this room that I got to know and got to have a really strong relationship with through that. And just talking to Hubert, who's an OG of radio. Where'd Hubert go? Hubert Smith. There he is. Hubert's the daddy mag of local radio. But that's the thing that's so important about local radio is having those personal connections and to be able to express and have those conversations and really flesh out the issues that are important to our community. And so that's something that I was very honored and grateful to be a part of, and I miss John Evans. He was a true patriot. But I served District 18, which starts kind of in South Knoxville and kind of goes south of the river and is part of Sequoia Hills and kind of down Lions Bend. I'm actually Becky Massey's representative, right? And all the way down towards kind of the Galahar View, that down through there from Westland, jump over, and it both precincts in Cedar Bluff and some of Beard Middle and Amherst area. And so my district actually touches every other representative's district except for probably no, Dave Wright's south of me. Probably Michelle Powell, Paul's Powell, everybody else I touch. And so I get everything from the holler to, Sequoia Hills. So we have a very diverse sort of, not only political spectrum, but also economic spectrum. And I've been very grateful to serve in the legislature this year. Our first session, some of the bills that I was able to pass with Dr. Briggs' support was here locally with regard to our Knoxville city elections. In the general election, the entire city could vote on your district candidate. And what we did was remove some of those exceptions to take it back to where district voters were the ones that determined their district voice, either in the another one that I felt like was really important that we were able to pass that I didn't realize that we didn't have until I was talking to our legislative action. We have, whenever you want to pass a bill, you draft it through the legal team. And so I was talking to them about some other legislation, and they mentioned to me, well, Elaine, you know that we don't have public comment codified. And I was surprised by that because I served on the county commission and the Knox County Ethics Committee, and we always had, public forum. And so that surprised me, and we had it in a lot of, school board meetings. And so we have it in practice, but we did not have it in our state legislation. And so we passed that in order to make sure that you can have your voice heard at our public meetings.
I'm State Representative Justin Lafferty. I serve the 89th District. You're going to hear up here 18th District and 14. I'm the 89th District because in 2000 the population of Memphis had dropped so much from so many people running out of there that they pulled an entire district of people and ended up dropping the district right here in all these teams. That has happened since this last census meeting, our last census in 2020. I'm sorry, I said 2000 the first time, 2010. They get in 2020, they lost another seat. Folks are running from the cities that are run by the liberal Democrats. You've already heard people in this room that have come here from out of state. There is an undercurrent going on in this country right now. People are making decisions. Politicians are slowly catching up to you. But keep on doing what you're doing. Keep on coming to our state. And keep supporting folks that you know get your best interest in mind. Thanks.
Good evening, I'm Zachary, I represent District 14. I am in my 5th term, so here's an interesting fact. So I'm in my 5th term, I'm the senior member of the House of Knox County delegation, but I'm still the youngest person in the entire delegation. I serve on the I represent Knox County Finance Committee, I serve on the Commerce Committee, and I chair calendar rules. And probably the most important in this conversation, I can talk about legislation I passed, but probably the most important thing that we're going to talk about tonight, Becky and I both serve on the Governor's Task Force talking about special session, which I assume we'll have a few questions, Richard, on those note cards about special session, but look forward to talking about that. And I'm just going to say this from the outset to maybe cut off some of the questions, because as I look at a TFA shirt right there, let me just make it abundantly clear. There will be no red flag or verbo law passed in the state of Tennessee. The House is adamantly opposed to it. Our speakers have lists on that. Just about every Senate member I've talked to feels the same way. And so there's so much concern, and I got it, as there should be. I mean, we need to remain vigilant. But it's not passing. It will not pass. And to speak to that point, there's also all this, that these behind-the-scenes meetings and all these things the governor's doing. Again, Becky and I are in the room. The governor has not talked about a red flag law one time. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say you will probably not even see that pushed when he rolls out his legislative agenda next week. So thank you.
Thank you all for being here and taking the time out to come and listen to a bunch of boring politicians or whatever. But no, thank you all for being here. But it is an honor to serve. I'm one of the 3 senators that represent Knox County. Senator Briggs and I are wholly in Knox County, and the Lieutenant Governor serves a small portion of our district. So it is an honor. We do not look at our district boundaries. We feel like we serve all of the community. And we kind of go to each other's expertise when it comes to issues that our constituents and folks in the district call us up and ask for help. And we reach out to each other all the time to work together to do the best we can do. But I do, just for point of reference, so I do have 2 times the square miles as he does. And it is the largest, most diverse urban district in the state senate. So, but I'm used to working harder than he does. But no, he works hard too. We give each other a hard time. I serve on the health committee, and I also am honored to chair the Senate Transportation and Safety Committee. And while, through my background running the Sir Thomas Center and serving adults with disabilities, a lot of the things that I get most passionate about is legislation that helps some of our most vulnerable citizens, whether it's kids that are being abused, or people with disabilities, or adults that are elderly that are very fragile. This year, though, I've done I had a breast screening bill, I had a deaf mentor bill, working to try to pass, help with the child care dilemma, and we have a promising futures bill that we hope to get over the line next year. But my biggest bill that I have this year, the most important, that really is going to impact everybody in Tennessee, is our Transportation Modernization Act. And this was the governor's #1 piece of legislation, and as chair of the Transportation Committee, I carried it through the Senate. And basically, the problem is that with our gas tax revenue, the first half of that goes to safety, toward paving and safety efforts, and as my friend here, for our guardrail repairs and things like that. But the second half is what we have, about $500,000 toward road expansions. We have $26 billion of road expansion projects on the list. That doesn't even include a potential bypass around Knoxville. In that way, it would have taken 52 years to complete all those projects. Kids in high school would be senior citizens by the time we got to all those projects. I'm sorry, that's unacceptable. The other thing was we weren't going to increase taxes. That was off the table. We weren't going to borrow because we're one of 5 states in the country that don't borrow for our roads. What that means is those states that borrow, the first dollar goes to debt payment. Our first dollar goes to safety and keeping our roads in decent shape. So that left us to look around the country at states, our conservative states, our Floridas, our Texas, but folks that were doing things right that had a history. And so we basically came up, there's 3 parts to it, and I'll do it real quick because it's a complicated bill, but one is public-private partnerships. We'll bring in some private investors to do some projects in our urban areas, and then we'll match that, leverage those dollars to do projects out in our rural areas, in our suburban areas. Part 2 is alternative build model, which helps us build these roads instead of an average of 15 years to build them in about 7 or 8 years. And the last one was to come into an equity with our electric vehicles because they really weren't paying their share. If you looked at the average that they drive and versus how much we were receiving in federal and state gas tax revenue from that vehicle. And so we've increased that. It's a couple of years rolling in, but we've increased that so that they will be paying their fair share. So it's a lot more details, and we can go into that later, but it was an honor to pass that bill. It passed with 79% of each house and with overwhelming support, and I was just pleased to help shepherd it through. And I mean, all we got to do is look out at 4075 or 18 miles of interstate, which we have the highest daily traffic count in the state. And our truck weigh station has the largest number in the whole country. So we have to do something, and this will help us. Thanks.
One thing, my name is Richard Briggs, and I'm the other state senator at Senator Massey, and she does spend more time on the road than I do, but with her land mass is 3 times as much as mine, and she has to do a lot more driving than I do. But she's a little bit modest because the biggest bill that we passed this year was the Transportation Modernization Act. We were talking to another group one time, and I had a couple of bills this year that actually had positive revenue coming in, and I said when we file our budget amendments at the end of the year, they ought to take that into consideration, that I had a net positive for the state, and she gave me a big kick under the table because her bill cost $3 billion, and she would never get out of the hole with that one. But anyway, I'm the chairman of the State and Local Government Committee, and we're just to mention briefly the bills that I'm the most proud of. They're not all bills that I passed, but they're bills that I blocked. One of the issues that we discussed deals with elections. And you all know that that's nationally been one of the most controversial areas in the United States is what is the election integrity. And what I'm most proud of is the bills that I was able to kill. And just let me give you something to think about. The Heritage Foundation, as you know, is a conservative think tank. Tennessee is #1 on election integrity. And the reason is that we fight back. And I really don't want to make this too political, but the Democrats bring up, they want ballots mailed to everyone. There would be there could be ballot harvesting, who knows? They want some of our people living in our states who are not citizens to be able to have driver's license and ID cards. I think that's just an invitation to vote for all. The other thing that we do is that we check an ID card every time. It has to be a state-issued ID every time someone votes. They're against that. So we've been able to fight back all of those. The other thing that a lot of people don't realize, because this is under the radar of the people that are looking at election integrity, Tennessee does a better job than any other state in the country of cleaning our voter rolls when people die or when people move out of state. And that's the reason we went from #3 to #1, is that our voter rolls, and they're not perfect. In every election, we're going to find some people that it ended up voting illegally. And I'll just give you a couple of examples of those that we did find in the last election. We had an elderly person who was unable to go to vote, either early voting or to go on election day. They requested an absentee ballot because of their age and infirmity. They received the ballot. Well, after they received the ballot, they died before they filled it out. And we had several cases of where family members said, Grandpa's last wish was to vote for Donald Trump or whoever. And so the family filled it out and sent it in. And whether it was right or wrong, but when that was discovered, those people were prosecuted to the full extent of the law, because that is illegal. You can't do it. You can't vote for someone. And we don't let dead people go either. Those were picked up in similar law. But I think that what we have to stand behind constantly, the other thing that you hear from some of the northern states is that southern states are trying to suppress the vote. And I just don't get them saying that. First of all, we have a very, very long period of early voting. By the way, Connecticut, which is one of the states that complains the most, you only vote on election. Some people may think that's... Did they go away with that finally? Yeah. They were one of the last states to do it. Tennessee has they have a very long period where you can vote early. And we also have Saturday voting, if you remember, for early voting. And we have 14 reasons that you can get an absentee ballot. And if you're over the age of 60, you don't have to have a reason other than you're over the age of 60. So I absolutely discredit the criticism that we receive, that we don't make it easy to vote. We have elections with integrity. We're going to continue to have elections with integrity. And I think that's something that we all ought to insist on, so that the person that wins the election in Tennessee really won the election in Tennessee.
Excuse me, I'm Frank Niceley. I used to represent part of Knox County. And when I ran for Senate, I moved up to 6 counties just east of here. I was born and raised in Knox County. My great-grandfather ran a grist mill up on the country. So I know all about Knox County. I watched it 2 years. Graduated UT. That's all proud of it, but I did graduate. But I ended up being a historian for the Senate somehow. Not because I know so much history, because the rest doesn't know so little. How many of y'all were born in Tennessee? Half? Well, the rest of it need a little history lesson, so I'll give you a history lesson about Tennessee. The Democrats ran Tennessee for 150 years. 12 years ago, the Republicans took over. And we invited Art Lafferty. Beth Harwell to speak in the House. She invited him to come in and talk to Congress. And he said, if you all will abolish the inheritance tax and the gift tax, within a couple of years, you'll have a huge surplus, more money than you spend. Well, we didn't know if it worked or not, but we thought we'd try it. Well, that's why it worked. So then, After abolishing the inheritance tax and the gift tax, we abolished the college income tax, phased it out over 4 or 5 years, so it didn't affect local budget too bad. Then we abolished the professional tax on everybody except lawyers and lobbyists. We didn't like lawyers and lobbyists. Just lifted up lawyers and lobbyists. And then we took all the tax off all the inputs in the farm, agriculture. And we, this year we got a 3-month tax-free grocery. And my wife came in there. My wife said, you better call Food City, they didn't take the tax off. I said, let me see it, dude. She spent $200, $100 on groceries, and $100 on everything else. Paper towel, toilet paper, everything. I said, they didn't take it off everything you buy, they just took it off the grocery part. But they did take it off $100. So that helped a lot, $100 worth of groceries. That's how we got $10. You know, I hear the church for $10 is up to a big deal, but a lot of people. But anyway, this year we reduced the taxes, I may have said this, $400 million on small businesses, franchise and excise tax, to help the small business get going. We've passed probably 40 gun bills. The NRA didn't pass one of them. Tennessee Farm Association didn't pass them. The Democrats didn't pass them. Tennessee Republicans passed these gun bills. We're one of the most gun-friendly state that I know. I never dreamed when I was young that you'd ever be a permit to carry a pistol, concealed, $100 for 8 years, put another 100 with it to get for life. My age, I didn't think that's a good investment. 8 years probably finished me off. But I didn't take the vaccine, so I'm doing better than my friends that did. I've lost a lot of friends. But anyway, that's kind of where we are in the state of Tennessee. Republicans do a good job. My wife says that if we don't quit cutting taxes, we're going to have every Yankee in the world out here. And I told myself, when the nice Yankee comes down here, we'll go up there. Well, there's that.
The last thing he made, I'm a medical doctor, and I like to put things in medical context. And you know, Yankees are sort of like elephants. And if they come down and go back up, that's okay. But when they come down here and stay, they're real payment.
With that, continue to go ahead and write down your questions if you want. If we can get to them, we will. But Mayor Jacobs will take it over from here.
Thanks everybody for being here, and especially thanks to our legislators for being here. I actually have some Midwest ties myself. Mike was talking about being from Chicago. I'm actually from outside St. Louis. I have an uncle that lived in Chicago. I got some horrible news about him recently. In the last election, he's a Republican. Right? Last election, his family told me he voted Democrat. So I mean, it's terrible, right? And I know that never would have happened. He never would have voted Democrat if he'd still been alive. So let's get to some questions. The first question is, what measures are being taken to ensure that the state does not water down the trigger abortion ban law in our state? I will just throw that out there for everyone wants to answer that one.
So last year, about the trigger bill. So last year we put that issue to bed. We just had a tweak to the bill in terms of changing the language to ensure the protection of life and the mother. It's the strongest pro-life bill in the country. We won't change. You know, governor's strong with pro-life. Legislature is strong with pro-life. My number one issue, and so I think we're extremely proud to pass that legislation. And as long as we have a supermajority of Republicans, that will change.
Anybody else want to comment?
I'll just make one comment. I'm not aware of any other legislation out there. Maybe some of the others first.
I think part of confusion about that was the affirmative defense for doctors and also life of the mother. That's what we ratified. for Senator Massey. What is the status of bypass?
Right now, the bypass is not on the list, but by passing the Modernization Act, there is some hope. And I've had conversation after conversation after conversation with the administration at TDOT, and I've asked them personally to do a study for me, so we can see the numbers, see where it needs to go. The original ones that was the orange and the blue route that some of these folks that when they were on county commission worked on, those really would be obsolete now. I mean, at our peak in the last, before COVID, was we were at peak in transportation, the cars going through here, it's been working its way up, and I haven't gotten the 2022 numbers, but in 2019, we had 215,000 cars going through right out here. I mean, that's the largest in the whole state. And we actually do, if you average in the average daily traffic count, have more cars than Nashville does. They've built more roads there. We have not built a new road in Knox County. We've expanded an interstate road since 1982 for the World's Fair when we built 640. So I'm continually advocating, but we're going to, they're going to do a study, and then I'll keep working on trying to get that taken care of. So thank you. Great question.
Also, Senator Massey and I sit on, your face,
Thank you.
we sit in an organization called the Transportation Planning Organization across the state. You have what are called MPOs, Mobility Planning Organizations, and they're regional organizations that work with TDOT to identify priorities and just liaison with the state and the local folks for things that we see here that we would like to look at. One of the things TPO has done is first thing in government that drives you nuts, but you do have to do studies to figure out where exactly you are, just what's happening, and what are some solutions. And one of the things that we've done through TPO is request the TDOT look at what's going on with 40 and 75 and try to figure out some solutions. Initially, it might not be a bypass, but some things like widening where it can be done, traffic calming. They've talked potentially about moving the way station at Campbell Station Road as Senator Massey. Yeah, and Senator Massey said that's the busiest way station in the country. What happens there is the trucks merging onto the interstate, so we're going to slow everything down. So there's some stuff that we're doing too to kind of encourage TDOT to move in that direction as much as we can. This is also for you though. So with the gas tax with Governor Haslam, a lot of money. Basically, how that worked was money was redirected into TDOT's fund, correct? Specifically through the gas tax.
Yes, absolutely.
So, what's happened to that money? What is the status of the Improve Act? And I guess specifically, is it time to merge the general and highway funds?
No, I think by having the highway, the TDOT funds separate, we can make sure that money, every penny that comes from a gas tax or any other revenue that comes that direction goes toward our roads. Whereas some states, if it gets in the general fund, it can get mixed all up. And they can do shell games and all that kind of stuff. So no, I don't believe it should. But I do believe that when we're having good years, like I said, we've reduced taxes by $2 billion since 2011, and our economy keeps growing. And I guess that was President Reagan kind of made that popular. But I think when we have good years, we put extra money into our roads, and we can kind of backfill it. And so, I mean, it's just like besides, the interstate roads that I was talking about, we gave $300 million this year to the counties, each of the counties. Normally they get $21 million a year for their road program. And we basically, Knox County got a little over $8 million. And like I say, it's divided, the formula, it's each of the 95 counties, half of it's divided by 95, and then a quarter is by the miles of the road, and a quarter is by population. So it's a fair way to do it, that's the way we always divide it, but I know the counties were ecstatic to be able, I know Mayor Jones was rubbing his hands like, we're not going to do it in the roads, you know, but no, it's, you know, and the status on the projects, there was like 635 projects or so on the thing. We're over halfway through finishing. They're all still in the ones that aren't done, we're still in process. We had bridges that we weren't even safe enough for school buses to drive over, or our fire trucks. So those projects are still going to be going on. This new money, we're going to be identifying new projects that will impact the state significantly. And I talk to the commissioner, you know, sometimes weekly, and he, you know, it's to be able to have a seat at the table. That doesn't mean I can get every single road. Every time I'm around Carson Daly, he tells me about another road he needs fixed. But we're going to continue to work on it, and we're in a lot better shape than most states. A lot of states are looking at because they don't have people moving there, and they don't have the traffic of people coming through here, because about 75% of the United States population is within a day's drive, so they're helping pay for our roads. They're using them, and they're putting wear and tear, but they're helping pay for them. But they're looking at, because of gas tax revenue going down, they're looking at by 2030 being having about 30% less just from their gas tax revenue because of not all the electric vehicles, mostly from the high mileage vehicles, and because that's the new things that are coming out. So we're going to keep working on it, and believe me, I keep advocating for our roads in East Tennessee.
I think something else to keep in mind with roads and infrastructure is it's not only a money issue, it's also a bandwidth and manpower issue. And we deal with that in Knox County. There's stuff that we have funded. We don't have a huge, in our public works, engineering public works, they're not actually out there building roads. We do some resurfacing, but it's actually kind of small. You know, if we want to keep government small, it's better to contract that stuff out, right? And TDOT's the same way. All these contractors right now, they have more work than they can do. And then you also still have supply chain issues. For instance, out of Halls High School, we were putting in a new crosswalk and signalage out there. And we were supposed to have that done by the opening of school last year. Problem was, poles to hang the lights on were back ordered a year. So we were just able to get that done, I think, over the summer. And we have had some other projects like that too. You know, so it's not just, sometimes the money's there, but it's just a matter of having the bandwidth to be able to complete those projects. And, you know, again, it's not an excuse, that's just kind of the practical world that we live in. So this is a great question. My daughters are both nurses, and one of my daughters is a nurse practitioner. During COVID, nurse practitioners were permitted to practice independently. Over 23 states and territories have full practice authority. Would you support full practice authority for nurse practitioners? Anybody? Yes.
So, yeah, I'm not on insurance or health, but I know we've had this bill in the past, and it just, anytime you talk about hypothetical legislation, my response is always the same: you have to read the legislation. And so the premise of the idea I'm open to, but in terms of what the legislation would look like, we've had it, and in my 5 terms there, this has come up before and it's never made it through. And so it's just all about the wording and the language of the legislation.
And I've been able to be on the insurance committee for the last 5 years, and one of the first things that I noticed when I got over there is just my perception of what's going on. We've got in healthcare what I call the 7-headed hydra, I won't go through all of them, but it's all various associations. They've got their niches carved out of the healthcare field, and they don't want anything to change, because anytime you change something, it affects all the other groups involved. So everybody's always jockeying for positions. So it's an interesting concept. It's something that might be able to help down the road with helping with cost, helping with ruling and things like that. But there's a lot of bureaucracy in the way to bring something like that to fruition.
So I serve on the insurance with Justin as well, and one of the things that, being new, obviously you learn the whole acronyms of all of the different, terms for medical practices, but one of the things that I heard throughout all of the committees that I served on was capacity. There was a need for people, and so I know that there is going to be a shortage of doctors. We've heard that from different various health industries, and also, we were at a groundbreaking the other day with the TCAP facility that Covenant Health was so generous in donating that land. We've got to have more people in medicine, and so we're going to have to kind of be a little bit creative in how we meet those needs of potential people. And if this is something that we can do safely and effectively to meet the medical needs of our community, I think the majority of us are open to that.
This is something that I've worked on a number of years ago. I passed a bill. We couldn't get the full practice over the line, but we did get a task force that did look at it, that was combined with docs and nurses and working through it. And there was a lot of agreement, except between the two chairs in between the meetings, and when they started emailing each other, I was kind of rolling my eyes because some of the things they were saying. But one of the big issues that the doctors pretty much keep bringing up is that residency that they participate in, and that the nurses don't go through that same residency. So I felt like, and we had a small group in the Senate that kind of worked on it this year to try to get it down, and I think we will continue that next year. But looking at basically hours of service, years of service, that would be a semblance of a residency equivalency that could give somebody that experience so that people could feel comfortable going to. When we did the task force, we changed it from supervise to collaboration. And, there's a small terminology, but it really was, they weren't sitting there supervising them, but they were collaborating. But what you're seeing sometimes is the collaborating doctor may be in an entirely different field than what the nurse practitioner is operating on. So, like an OB overseeing, just a general doctor, general nurse practitioner. So there's definitely the sentiment to keep moving this down the road a little bit more. I think what you could see potentially is passing it more for our rural areas first, which is really where these healthcare deserts are, and that would get us another step down the road. But I do support moving it down the road. Thank you.
I'll try to keep this brief. I actually had a bill about 3 years ago that would allow nurse practitioner graduates or physician assistant graduates. They could go and work with a primary care doctor for 5 years. The first 3 years, they would just work in the office with them, just like they would normally. The last 2 years that they worked with them, Lincoln Memorial University, and there were a couple of other universities. I actually flew down to Florida, out to Colorado, Kentucky, West Virginia, and Virginia, because there were other universities that were interested in this. They would have an online program and a weekend program where they would get advanced educational training, particularly in pharmacology, and then in some of the others, like some of the other areas such as in diagnostics, so they would be ordering appropriate tests for appropriate conditions. And then at the end of 5 years, and this is 5 years graduate, they now have 5 years experience working with a primary care doctor and they also had 2 more formal years of education, they would actually get, we called it a doctor of medical science. So they could call themselves doctor, but on their name tags, they still had to put what their status was. They were not MDs or DOs. Then they could go and practice independently, but they needed to be associated. They would be licensed by the Board of Medical Examiners, the same board licensed physicians. Then they could go into a practice, but they needed to be associated either with a large primary care practice. They didn't even have to be in the same town. They needed to be associated with them. Or if they wanted to be hired by Covenant or UT or Tenova or Vanderbilt, one of the groups, they could apply as what they call associate privileges, because that's really what a lot of the family practitioners are doing today, because they don't actually practice at the hospital, but all their referrals would go through their hiring institution. And then every 2 years, they would be reviewed by the credentialing committee in the hospital. For those of you who don't know, I'm a medical doctor. I'm a cardiovascular surgeon, so I had 4 years of college, 4 years of medical school, and 8 years of surgical training. And every 2 years, my credentials are reviewed by the hospitals where I had privileges. And they would have, every 2 years, they would have their credentials reviewed. And in those cases, I think we would have a situation where we would have very well, highly trained people in primary care, but no doctor, I don't care if he's a board-certified family doctors, everyone needs to have someone looking at their work to be sure that they're doing the right thing. And I really believe that the vast majority of them can do the right thing. But the nurse practitioner programs that we have, there's really 2 types. Some of them are an 18-month program, and some of them are a 24-month program. And I just don't think that you can substitute 18 months of education for 16 years of education that you have as a position like me. But it doesn't mean that you still can't do primary care.
Rick, what happened to your bill, and is it still a possibility that it might be passed?
Well, what happened, I'm a medical doctor, MD, but we have our doctors of osteopathy, which are very well trained over the same way we are, and they do residencies just like MDs do. But it was the National Osteopathic Organization came down, and we have 2 osteopathic colleges. One is at LNU in Harrogate, and then right here at Oxford, we have a very large osteopathic college. And they said that if that bill passed, they were going to pull the credentials for both of those schools. And we do need those several hundred graduates from those 2 schools out of here. I mean, these are much more highly trained doctors who could afford to lose those.
That is absolutely ridiculous to hold that over the heads of nurses, and I'm sorry, I shouldn't be interrupting, but some of the things you're saying are just absolutely ridiculous. A doctor telling nurses that they don't have a right to practice.
Well, you guys can talk about that in private.
I don't think that's what I said.
And then also,
I'll let Frank talk.
Senator Niceley, please.
I've always supported that MPA stand alone after they've served as a doctor for 3 to 5 years. And I think if PAs and other practitioners get together, they can beat a lot because of each other all the time. If they all get together, it would help. And like I say, I've always been for it. I think it's a passion for the next 2 or 3 years.
And so my daughter is a nurse practitioner. Senator Briggs is actually one of the people that helped train her. She did her clinicals, or what do they call it?
Well, no, it was more than that. I worked with her on a daily basis in the open heart unit at the old St. Mary Hospital. And then she entered her training also. But I worked with her when she was one of our absolutely best open heart nurses. And I worked with her on a daily basis.
I'll throw something else too, just about a specific medical procedure that I'd love for you guys to think about. I had cataract surgery about 5 years ago. It was wonderful, I could see really well. And then a few months ago, I started having fuzziness in my left eye. So I go to my optometrist, eye doctor, and he looks in my eye, and basically what happens is sometimes your body will grow tissue on the prosthetic lens that they put in. And he's like, it's a really simple procedure to get rid of that. They literally dilate your pupil, shoot laser in your eye, that's it, right? The problem is in Tennessee, The optometrist can't do that. You have to go back to your eye surgeon. So I had to wait a month before the eye surgeon could see me for a consultation. Then a couple more weeks, they got me in, and I'm sitting there, and the eye surgeon's like, "Dadgummit, I wish the optometrist could do this here in Tennessee." So y'all take a look at that one, please, okay? Thanks.
For that.
Yeah, so switching gears here, this is a great question. And I agree with Representative Zachary. Everything that I've heard coming out of Nashville is there will not be red flag or purple laws. That doesn't mean that someone won't decide to throw it out there, but they just don't stand a chance. So the question is,